Okay, welcome to a little bit less Doomium edition. Today we have more class spec tuning changes for the alpha of Midnight. So we have talents, abilities, hero talents, apex talents being changed in this latest build of the alpha, and this, as mentioned, is slightly less depressing. There is some negativity around these changes that we have seen already because of the amount of pruning, the amount of removal of abilities or simplification of the mechanics of your specs, etc, etc. In this build we are at least above the 6 out of 10 in terms of changes, possibly higher. It's definitely not one of the bad ones. So, starting alphabetically from DK, no, we don't care too much about Epidemic extending the duration of your dots by half a second longer. We're looking for cooler changes in here. There is one change which is good in the sense that it makes Cycle of Hatred less necessary, because now the cooldown reduction of your Cycle of Hatred for your I-Beam is nerfed by 10 seconds. It's nerfed by twice as much, essentially because now the base cooldown of I-Beam is also lowered by 10 seconds. There isn't much else. Where you have a few more changes though is in Devastation. So there is one obvious change here, which is Imminent Destruction. So this was the hero talent over here, which gave you discount, the essence cost discount to your Disintegrate Empire, and this used to last 12 seconds. The reason why this is now being nerfed to only lasting for 4 of your next abilities is because as Devastation now you also have access to Strafing Run, which allows you to recast Deep Breath up to 18 seconds after you casted it for the first time. So obviously with this one buffing your discount of Disintegrate Empire for 12 seconds after you Deep Breath, you could Deep Breath, gain the buff for 12 seconds, and then thanks to Strafing Run, Deep Breath again after 12 seconds to effectively keep this buff, this discount buff running for 24 seconds total. So they are capping it now to being 4 discounts, and then it says of course that it stacks up to 8 times because you can Deep Breath again. You can Deep Breath your second time, so you're gonna be able to Deep Breath 4 discounts, Deep Breath again, 4 more discounts, which is still less than what you used to have, so technically it's still overall a nerf for the effect. The other, though much more relevant change for Devastation is the addition of Apex talents. So while Dragon Rage is active, you gain Rising Fury every 6 seconds, increasing your haste by 4% per stack up to 5 times. This will happen all the time. Devastation Evokers with their Dragon Rage, they can get on average a 40-second lasting Dragon Rage because of Animosity. So being able to get these 5 stacks takes 30 seconds. So you will basically pretty much always get to these 5 stacks, so this 20% haste increase. Then once you reach the 5 stacks, you also gain 15% more damage. And then, once Dragon Rage ends, you also gain, for 20 seconds after, 4 seconds per stack, you still retain all of the haste and all of the damage increase that you got during Dragon Rage. So you are gaining 15% more damage and 20% more haste, even for 20 seconds after your Dragon Rage has ended. So it is pretty powerful as far as Apex talent setups go, both inside of your cooldown, because as we said, if Dragon Rage lasts for about 40 seconds, in the last 10 seconds of this cooldown you will have 15% more damage and 20% haste fully gained, and then lasting also for 20 seconds after that. So it's still a very good power increase, burst window for Devastation Evoker with these Apex talents. Preservation also gets quite a few changes. Yes, most of these are still simplifying the spec. The spec has been simplified by quite a bit. For example, Lifebind can no longer spread to many players with Echo and Verdant Embrace. You have Call of Visera no longer requiring Verdant Embrace to be activated. Now it's active at all times. Spirit Bloom is gone. Emerald Communion is gone. And now you also have Tempo Charge gone. This was your tier set, which was put into a talent in Season 3, and now it's been removed. Now you no longer gain more healing based on the stacks of temporal compression you have. So you have to make sure in your UI you have to keep track of the amount of stacks of temporal compression every time before using Dream Breath, because you wanted to make sure as a Preservation Evoker you had 4 stacks of this Tempo Charge effect. Now this is gone, so it is definitely still further simplifying the spec. This talent, Blizzard has been thinking about what to do with this talent. Previously they allowed you to recast Verdant Embrace up to 3 times within 5 seconds of casting Verdant Embrace. Now they have, we can say, made it simpler. Now Verdant Embrace has a second charge. Very simple. This can be stored for spot healing damage events, for example, when you don't need to spot heal anyone. You just save your charge, you sit on 2, so you can use it for higher single target damage heavy events. This is overall less relevant in the raid if we still assume the new Flame Shipper build in the raid is an absolute meme that will not work. Then the second charge of Verdant Embrace is much stronger in Mythic Plus for spot healing for Evoker. Now for Hunter, the absolute main course of the patch cycle is survival. There is only one change for BM, which is taking your Bloodshed as a button and then turning it into a passive that procs by itself once you activate Bestial Wrath, so you don't have to keep track of this button anymore. But the absolute main changedness comes to survival. So first, besides the fact that Sentinel as a whole has been reworked, there has been a heavy rework also to your spec 3, because now you have, for starters, Boomstick, which is now an AoE set of shotgun blasts on a default 1-minute cooldown, which can be further reduced in AoE by 5 seconds every time you wildfire bomb. So it goes down quite a lot, and it can go down even further below because you can reduce the cooldown of this shotgun blasts by 30 seconds. So it can be a 30-second cooldown default, going down by 5 seconds each wildfire bomb. But the main change though is gonna be in your new takedown cooldown, because this will be tied to your Apex talents, which are based on a lot of synergy with takedown and the return with a vengeance of Tip of the Spear. So the weaving synergy of kill command, damage ability, kill command, damage ability, kill command, damage ability, because you want to buff every ability by 15%. So you want to kill command, Raptor Strike, kill command, Boomstick, kill command, Wildfire Bomb, because you want to keep these 15% damage increases running. So your Apex talents makes your Raptor Strike has a 1 in 4 chance to hit again in AoE for the same damage, except now on 5 targets. Then doing your takedown cooldown, the chance is guaranteed. So you always do AoE damage with Raptor Strike inside of takedown, plus 20% more damage, because otherwise, of course, in single target it will be wasted. Doing AoE damage with Raptor Strike if you're fighting a boss doesn't do anything, right? So you also do 20% more damage. And lastly, Raptor Strike also causes your pet to do extra damage, giving you, on top of that, 3% stacking haste the more you click this. This is very synergistic, of course, because with takedown, for starters, it has a base 1.5 minute cooldown. You can bring it down to a 1 minute cooldown. You can insta gain 3 charges of tip of the spear, so you don't have to use kill command as soon as you enter takedown. You can use your bigger damaging abilities from the get-go, and it also turns it into an AoE ability. 50% more damage plus AoE plus 100% more attack speed inside of takedown. The other cool addition about survival is, yes, you're still playing around bombs. You still have tons of infusion, bomb, synergy, damage increase, cooldown reduction, extra charges, etc, etc. But now you also have Flame Fang Pitch, which is Flame Strike. A very big, flashy Flame Strike. You do AoE damage on use and leave behind an area of flame taking damage on enemies. Then you have the follow-up talent making you and your pet do more fire damage for 10 seconds after you use this firebomb. And then you get a second charge of the firebomb, which also instantly gives you one more charge of wildfire bomb. So technically, in a big AoE pool, you could do something like wildfire bomb, flame fang patch, wildfire bomb, flame fang patch, wildfire bomb in very quick succession. Also maybe inside of your takedown cooldown. The main point of all of these changes for survival is that a ton of these are AoE focused, because Boomstick is by default AoE, Flame Fang Pitch is by default AoE, which also gives you more charges of Wildfire Bomb, which is more AoE, and then you have your Takedown, which can be talented to also do AoE. So a lot of these talents just give you even more AoE. Now Sentinel, as we said, has been reworked, but basically now procs your Sentinel, which marks enemies based on you consuming Tip of the Spear. Tip of the Spear is a bigger part of your rotation now, especially if you play Sentinel and you want to make use of a Sentinel and your Owl, you will have to play around Tip of the Spear. It does look like very, very good in Mythic Plus, at least in terms of flat out AoE damage. This is not all though, because your General 3 also gets a whole bunch of goodness as a hunter, and this is not just survival but BM as well, because previously your Exile was gaining CDR based on the focus you were spending. Now it's a flat 1 minute CDR, which is overall better for your discounts. You also get completely for free, this is nowhere to be found in live, you get 10% flat more HP as a hunter. You get better QOL on your Binding Shot, because now Binding Shot gets the Horse Hair Tether, which instantly snaps back enemies towards the center if they're getting stunned. So if they are getting towards the end of the Binding Shot, which means you can cast Binding Shot so that the edge of Binding Shot is hitting the enemy, so the enemies instantly get yanked back, which is very good in Mythic Plus. Your AoE synergy is not over, because now Intimidation has a follow-up talent which turns it into an AoE stun. So now you have a 1 minute AoE stun as a hunter. Then you have Roar of Sacrifice being turned from something that protects the target from crits, not making them crittable, which is mostly relevant because crits in at least PvE are not a thing. Now instead, Roar Sacrifice is a flat out 15% DR cooldown, or you can simply choose to take 3% less damage at all times. So it's quite a lot of extra tankiness for Hunter in general. You're not really losing anything, you still have 2 charges of Survival of the Fittest, you still have Exhilaration, you have a Turtle, which is now 30% faster CDR, plus also takes 20% less damage inside of Turtle, not 30% damage reduction, but 50% damage reduction, and you also gain 10% more stamina, and you get a yank back mechanic to your Binding Shot, and you get an AoE stun with Intimidation, and also 3% flat DR if you want with Guardian's Hide. So a lot of extra tankiness for Hunter in general from your General 3 as well. Mage doesn't get anything for Arcane or Frost, it does get a whole bunch of stuff for Fire. Fire does change from the live version to the current Midnight build in essentially having an even more straight line change between the AoE side to the right and the execute and more AoE side to the left. You still have, as you know, you lost Scorch as a mage, you also lost Phoenix Flames as a mage, so now all of the extra execute synergy goes to Fireball. So always crits on enemies in execute range, 50% more damage on enemies in execute range, 30% more movement speed to yourself on enemies in execute range. After that, you have Fire Blast doing splash damage, you have Fire Blast spreading Ignite, you have Fire Blast spreading 50% additional Ignite, and then when combustion ends, it blows up for AoE damage on all enemies with Ignite, consuming the Ignite for AoE damage. So you have Execute and AoE on this side, you still have the AoE on the right, which you used to have in live, except now it's not about Living Flame, Living Bomb, and all of this synergy. Now it's just much more simply about Meteor damage, as well as Flame Strike, extra damage, with the final point, Cinderstorm being the extra proc effect of doing more AoE damage. And then you have this giant block in the middle, which is presumably what you will take if you're not doing Mythic Plus and you don't care about AoE damage, is what you will focus on as a Fire Mage. You have also gotten a reasonable amount of general talent 3 changes as a mage. In general, it's nerf to your defensiveness because you have lost your mass barrier, and you have lost the damage reduction portion, the DR portion that you have right now, to Mirror Image. However, one of the key points of Midnight is that you have so many more points here, on top of the pruned talents you don't have anymore, that you have tons of extra points to spend in a lot of utility. So as a mage, you were never able to take Mass Invis in Mythic Plus because you had to take Mass Barrier. Now you can take Mass Invis, you can also take Ring of Frost, or even Mass Polymorph, the second charge of Frost Nova. You can still take your Supernova or Dragon's Breath. You can take your Greater Invis and your D-Curse, all of these extra things that now you have way more free talents to pick up because they're just much freer. The only extra bonus to your defensiveness now is that you get a 30-second extra CDR to your Ice Block or your Ice Cold on top of what you already had in live, the 1 minute CDR, as well as the choice of wanting an extra blink charge or the ability to get the alter time blink, the being able to teleport back to where you last blinked. That's one of the choices at the end of your mage picks. But you have lost some defensiveness, some tankiness, which was much needed compared to the level of tankiness other specs have. Mage, even with this, is still far above the other specs in terms of tankiness, most other specs anyways. Holy Paladin doesn't change a lot, even if you read 15 talents changed here. Many of these are mostly small-ish numbers, buffs to, for example, the healing of Light of Dawn, the healing of Holy Shock. The only buff to healing worth mentioning because of the size is Holy Light, which is buffed to being a 2079% spell power heal. If you're not a healer, compare this level of a heal with one of the bigger single target heals you can get right now, which is the Holy Priest's Serenity. This one is 1600% spell power, and Holy Paladin gets a spammable 2000% spell power heal right now. That was the main change really for Holy Paladin, as well as the removal finally of a terrible talent like Divine Favor. But for the most part, nothing major for Paladin or for Priest. I am stopping on Sub because Sub has a pretty cool change, 2 different cool changes. So the cool change of Sub is that you lose the need to get an improved Shadow Dance talent for 2 extra seconds. Now instead, your Shadow Dance by default has an 8-second duration and also a 30-second recharge timer instead of 45. Now the badness for Sub comes with your Deepening Shadows. So the older version of Deepening Shadows didn't even have anything to do with this. It was about spending combo points. If you go to the changelog before 12.0, your finishing moves reduce the remaining cooldown of Shadow Dance by 5% per combo point divided by 10 seconds. So 5 combo points, it's 25% divided by 10, 2.5 seconds cooldown reduction to your Shadow Dance. It's pretty simple. Now, this is Shadow Dance duration, so not the cooldown reduction, but the duration of the Shadow Dance is increased by 100% of your haste. So you have 30% haste, your 8-second Shadow Dance is now 2.4 seconds longer. The not cool of this is that, first of all, the older version was still giving you more CDR, but that's perhaps why Blizzard made Shadowlands now be 15 seconds shorter in cooldown. So that is still saved in terms of change. What isn't saved is haste, because Sub doesn't go for haste. Haste is awful. Sub just stacks mastery. Some tiers they stack verse if crit is not good enough, otherwise they stack crit. Haste is awful. So with this change, this would read: Shadow Dance duration is increased by 7% because your haste is poor. So it's not that great. But the base increase of the duration and the cooldown reduction of Shadow Dance for Sub is good. Stormkeeper gets cut in half. Now you only have one empowered lightning bolt instead of two. Resto gets a further buff to healing wave. Now it's up to 730% from 650. Similar treatment to a few other healers getting their single target heal buffed again. Big change to Ascendance. All of the splashed redistributed healing mechanic is gone. Now you get instacast chain heals. After Riptide, you instacast chain heal and all of your healing is increased by 30%. So Riptide, chain heal, Riptide, chain heal, Riptide, chain heal, buffed by 30%. That's how your Ascendance window will now look like as a Shaman. This is also somewhat slightly buffing further Farseer, because Farseer already synergizes with having more Riptide, already synergizes with having more casts of Riptide healing more, having more procs of Ancestors, which can give you cooldown reduction of Riptide for you to cast more Riptides, which means you also get more chances to work with your Apex talents, which work with Riptide. And now with this change of Ascendance, the more Riptides you can cast, the more insta-cast chain heals you can have. And then this is also further changing the power level of DRE, because getting Ascendance for only 6 seconds, it's a very short period. You couldn't really use it for too much in the older version, but in this new version, even 6 measly seconds of Ascendance are enough to do something like Riptide, instacast chain heal, Riptide, instacast chain heal, Riptide, instacast chain heal. So the value of Farseer essentially is going up a lot in Midnight, both from the Apex talents as well as the new version of Ascendance. It is very good for Farseer, as well as Blizzard going back on their word and bringing back Unleash Life, and making still now Unleash Life be the one that procs your Ancestors. Still not as good as proccing them from Undulation, which is gone, but it's better than before, where they made it proc from Healing Stream Totem, which was terrible for Farseer. Now it's better. Less good are the changes to the general tree. At first there was a lot of hopium and copium about the change because the last talents were not implemented yet. So, you know, Earthen Bulwark Totem cooldown is gonna be added soon. It's not. It's removed from the game. So as a Shaman, you are now back instantly at being the squishiest spec in the game by a considerable margin. All you have now is a measly Astral Shift on a 90-second CD and 5% damage reduction when you pop out your Elemental. That's it. You are terribly squishy now without Earthen Bulwark Totem. They could have done something about your Ankh. They could have given them the Holy Priest Restitution tier, making it reset in between raid pulls, in between pulls in the raid. They didn't. In fact, they actually nerfed it. They cut the stamina from 10% to 5%. Now you actually are even weaker now. You lost a defensive cooldown, you lost 5% of your stamina. Still weird what they are doing with the tankiness of Shaman. Actually, it's pretty worrying for the spec and the class, actually, because this is for all 3 Shaman specs. Warlock doesn't get anything for the specs. They do get a lot though for the class. Many very good changes for a Warlock in terms of general talent tree. So compared to what you have now, you're losing nothing. let's not give you the same worry about like Shaman, you're losing a major defensive, or like Mage, you're losing a bunch of tankiness. You're not. What you have in live right now, your Unending Resolve, the cooldown reduction or extra DR of Unending Resolve, your Dark Pact, your Demonic Gateway, your extra, where is it? Your extra Soul Leech, Absorption, your pet sharing part of your damage, your utility with Soulburn, and your empowered Healthstone, even Mortal Coil, still there. All of this is all here. If you go into the beta version, all of this is still here. What is even cooler though is the extra stuff you get, because you're able to retain all of these talents while still having 5 talents actually free for you to take other things. And this is actually already including some of the talents you don't have now. For example, Foul Mouth. Casting a curse now splashes the curse in AoE. So now you can go in Mythic Plus and mass slowing the attack of all enemies by 20%, or mass slowing the cast time of all enemies by 30%, which is major. It's majorly good compared to a single curse. You also have another extra, which is Fortified Soul Leech, now granting you shields up to 8% of your maximum HP. You have though something very cool. First, to your extra defensiveness, the fact that you can now drain life 100% faster, restoring 100% more health, as well as healing for an additional 200% of the damage dealt, and also going to build up your Soul Leech absorption. This is good because these are, as we said, free talent points. You're not losing anything major to take these extra defensive talents. But the coolest one, definitely, is Blight of Weakness. You call forth a cloud of clawing shadow that increases the time between attacks of enemies of 100%, as well as less crit chance. 100% slower auto attack of mobs is major in Mythical Plus. It is a legitimate tank, defensive, external. If you're not aware, when you look at a Mythic Plus key, this is a 21 Streets of Wonder, you look at the damage taken, you look at the tank, 60% of their damage is going to be tank related, and when we're talking about the important melee damage, is going to be the trash pulls. That's 63% of the damage taken being melee. So being able to essentially halve this damage, simply because the enemies are now half as fast at auto attacking, is significant during the initial major pull of like 3 packs of mobs all at once. You can drop this down as a Warlock, and it's going to be a significant help to your group. So you have not lost anything as a Warlock in terms of tankiness or utility. You are gaining mass AoE curses in Mythic Plus. You are gaining an AoE mega auto attack slow in Mythic Plus. Extra defensiveness actually with your drain life, with these free talents you can spend without losing basically any other tools as a Warlock. So this is actually pretty cool for the class as a whole, since this is for all of them. Warrior doesn't get anything major besides the extra last few talent points in your hero talents, the one that weren't being added, but obviously being passive effects are mostly just damage increases. So for Slayer it's 15% haste for 8 seconds once you're done blade storming, and then Executioner's duration is 6 seconds longer, right? For Montantane you do gain these two. Conductivity to give you 10% more damage, and critical strike damage of Lightning Strike, and this is more important, during Avatar, Thunderblast extends Avatar's duration by 2 seconds. The one that was added in full was Colossus. All of this line was new. For Colossus, the Demolish giving you AoE deep wounds on all targets at 100% effectiveness at the end of Demolish. Mortal Strike crits, also increasing the rend and deep wounds damage. And then finally, the last hit of Demolish gets you 10% haste for 10 seconds and guaranteed crit on your next Mortal Strike. But as mentioned, this one being just minor talent points in your hero talent. They're not like major effects. They were just the last few ones actually missing from the hero talent passives, and these are the ones we have gotten for warrior as well. But as pointed out when we started almost half an hour ago at this point, many of these changes this time around have been somewhat more positive compared to, as said, the depression that we have gotten when we started looking at many of the pruning effects, pruning changes of the specs. We have gotten a few more positive changes, nicer changes, even though we still have to look at quite a few specs being simplified by a lot. As I said, we will see then how they will play out in the end, but in terms of level of changes, this one was less bad than usual. It was more decent in terms of sets of changes for the Midnight Alpha. So with this one recapped, we can now stop for today, for this Friday. According to some, the beginning of the weekend. We can now stop and leave each other for today by starting to thank everyone for having watched the video, together with, of course, everyone else who has been supporting completely for free by liking and commenting down below, as well as subscribing to the channel itself. Now, with these things out of the way, thank you guys again for watching. See you guys tomorrow, and in the meantime, I'm just testing the reflexes of my camera, really, not much else.